Harper's hand trembled as she held the phone to her ear, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Castellano, you need to come home. Now." She glanced toward the locked playroom door, where 4-year-old Oliver's muffled sobs had finally gone silent. Behind that door, Charlotte Westwood, the celebrated child therapist everyone trusted, was doing something that made Harper's blood run cold. "She's hurting your son," Harper breathed into the phone, her heart hammering against her ribs. The line went dead. She didn't know if Benjamin Castellano had heard her. She didn't know if he would believe a babysitter he'd hired just 3 weeks ago over the prestigious therapist he'd been paying for 6 months. All Harper knew was that she couldn't stand by and watch Oliver suffer another second. Not again. Never again. If you want to discover how this moment came to be, and what happened when Benjamin Castellano received that call, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one to life. 3 weeks earlier, Harper Williams had stood outside the iron gates of the Castellano mansion in Beacon Hill, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The Victorian estate loomed before her, all steep gables and leaded windows, the kind of old-money elegance that made her acutely aware of the worn patches on her winter coat. She'd taken this interview out of desperation. Her landlord in Dorchester had given her until the end of the month, and her savings account was laughing at her with its double-digit balance. The gate buzzed open without warning, making her jump. She walked up the cobblestone drive, her breath forming clouds in the February air. Before she could knock, the massive oak door swung inward. Benjamin Castellano stood in the doorway, and Harper's first thought was that he looked nothing like a mob boss. Her second thought was that she was an idiot. Of course, he didn't look like a movie villain. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair starting to silver at the temples, and eyes the color of expensive whiskey. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent, and when he looked at her, really looked at her, Harper felt like he could see straight through to every secret she'd ever kept. "Miss Williams," he said, his voice deep and measured. "You're early. I'm sorry, I appreciate punctuality." He stepped aside. "Come in." The interior of the mansion was breathtaking. Marble floors, a sweeping staircase, oil paintings that belonged in museums. But Harper barely noticed. Her attention was caught by the small figure sitting on the bottom step of the staircase. Oliver Castellano was tiny for 4 years old, with his father's dark hair and the biggest, saddest brown eyes Harper had ever seen. He wore expensive clothes, a little cardigan and pressed pants, but he sat perfectly still, his hands folded in his lap, watching her with an expression far too solemn for a child. Harper's heart cracked a little. "Oliver," Benjamin said, his voice softening in a way that surprised her. "This is Miss Harper. She might be your new babysitter." The boy didn't speak, didn't smile, just looked at her with those devastating eyes. Harper knelt down, bringing herself to his level. She'd learned long ago, back when she'd been a caseworker, back before everything fell apart, that children responded better when you met them where they were. "Hi, Oliver," she said gently. "That's a really cool truck you have there." She'd noticed the toy fire truck clutched in his small hands, the only thing about him that seemed childlike. Oliver's eyes widened slightly. He looked at his father, then back at Harper. "He doesn't speak," Benjamin said quietly. There was something raw in his voice, something that sounded like barely concealed pain. "He hasn't since his mother died, 18 months ago." Harper's chest tightened. She knew that kind of trauma, had seen it before in the children she'd tried to help, before the system had failed them, before she'd failed them. "That's okay," Harper said to Oliver, keeping her voice soft. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. But I bet that fire truck is really fast, huh?" For the first time, something flickered in Oliver's expression, not quite a smile, but close. He stood up slowly and walked over to her, holding out the truck. Harper took it carefully, like the precious offering it was. "Wow, this is the coolest fire truck I've ever seen. Does it have a siren?" Oliver nodded. He pressed a button on the side, and a tiny siren sound filled the foyer. "Mr. Castellano!" A crisp female voice cut through the moment. Harper looked up to see a blonde woman in her early 30s descending the stairs, wearing a cream-colored suit that screamed expensive. I wasn't aware we had an appointment this morning. We don't, Benjamin said, his tone cooling several degrees. Harper Williams, this is Charlotte Westwood. She's Oliver's therapist. Charlotte's smile didn't reach her eyes as she looked Harper up and down. Harper was suddenly very aware of her thrift store coat, her Target shoes, the way her natural hair was pulled back in a simple bun because she couldn't afford her usual salon. How lovely, Charlotte said. Another babysitter. Oliver does go through them rather quickly, doesn't he? Harper saw Oliver shrink back slightly, the light that had briefly appeared in his eyes dimming. That will be all, Charlotte, Benjamin said, and there was steel in his voice now. Your session with Oliver isn't until this afternoon. Charlotte's smile tightened, but she nodded. As she passed Harper, she leaned in slightly. Good luck, she whispered. You'll need it. After Charlotte left, Benjamin led Harper to his study. The interview itself was surprisingly straightforward. He needed someone who could be there in the evenings. His business kept him out late, and Oliver needed consistency. The pay was generous, almost too generous. Why me? Harper asked finally. My resume shows I was fired from my last position. Most people wouldn't even grant me an interview. Benjamin looked at her for a long moment. I had you investigated, Miss Williams. I know you were fired from Child Protective Services for filing a complaint against the Morrison family. I also know the Morrisons used their political connections to ensure you'd never work in social services again. Harper's mouth went dry. Then why? Because you did the right thing, even when it cost you everything. Benjamin leaned forward. I need someone who will protect my son. Someone who won't be intimidated. Someone who will tell me the truth, even when it's difficult. His eyes held hers. I think you're that person. Harper's throat burned with unexpected emotion. No one had said anything like that to her in the 8 months since she'd been fired. No one had seen her as anything other than a troublemaker who couldn't follow the rules. I'll take the job, she said. Good. Benjamin stood, extending his hand. When Harper shook it, she felt the calluses on his palm. This was a man who'd worked his way to power, not inherited it. You start tonight. As Harper left the mansion that day, Oliver appeared in the doorway. He didn't speak, but he raised one small hand in goodbye. Harper waved back, and for the first time in months she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could do some good again. She had no idea that in 3 weeks she'd be making the most important phone call of her life. Harper quickly learned the rhythms of the Castellano household. Benjamin left each evening around 7, returning sometime after midnight. Oliver went to bed at 8:30, though he rarely slept well. Harper could hear him moving around his room, playing quietly with his toys in the dark. Charlotte came 3 times a week for therapy sessions that lasted exactly 1 hour and always left Oliver more withdrawn than before. It was the therapy sessions that bothered Harper most. The first time she witnessed one, she'd been putting away toys in the adjacent playroom when she heard Charlotte's voice rise sharply. Oliver, I've told you 3 times. Use your words. If you can't even try, how do you expect to get better? Harper had peeked through the crack in the door. Oliver sat at a small table, tears streaming silently down his face while Charlotte loomed over him with a stack of flashcards. Crying won't help you, Charlotte said coldly. Your father is paying me very good money to fix you, and I can't do that if you won't cooperate. Every instinct Harper had screamed at her to intervene, but she knew how this worked. She was the new babysitter. Charlotte was the licensed professional. If Harper complained, she'd be the one accused of overstepping, just like before. But that night, when she tucked Oliver into bed, she noticed the finger-shaped bruises on his upper arm. Oliver, she said gently, kneeling beside his bed, did someone grab you today? Did someone hurt you? Oliver's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't respond. He pulled his blanket up higher, trying to hide. Harper's hands shook with rage and helplessness. She knew those bruises, had documented them 100 times in her old job, but without Oliver speaking, without proof beyond marks that could be explained away. I believe you, Harper whispered. I don't know what's happening, but I believe something is wrong. And I'm going to help you, I promise. Oliver looked at her with such desperate hope that Harper's heart shattered. The next evening, Benjamin returned home earlier than usual. Harper was reading to Oliver in the library when she heard the front door open. Oliver immediately tensed, and Harper realized he was afraid. Not of his father, but that his father would be angry he was still awake. "It's okay," Harper murmured. "We'll tell him you couldn't sleep. That's not a bad thing." Benjamin appeared in the doorway, and Harper was struck again by the contradiction he presented. This man who controlled Boston's underworld, who made hardened criminals tremble, standing there with exhaustion etched into every line of his face, looking at his son with such naked love, it hurt to witness. "Papa," Oliver mouthed silently, and Benjamin's expression crumbled. "Hey, buddy," Benjamin said, crossing the room in 3 strides. He scooped Oliver up like he weighed nothing. "Can't sleep?" Oliver shook his head against his father's shoulder. "That's all right. We'll read together." Benjamin glanced at Harper. "Thank you, Miss Williams. You can go home. I'll take it from here." Harper stood but hesitated. "Mr. Castellano, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How long has Oliver been working with Charlotte?" Benjamin's jaw tightened. 6 months. She came highly recommended. Supposed to be the best child trauma specialist in New England. He looked down at Oliver. "But he's not getting better, is he?" "No," Harper said quietly. "He's not. Charlotte says it's normal. That healing takes time. That we need to be patient and trust the process." Harper took a breath, knowing she was about to step onto dangerous ground. "Mr. Castellano, in my experience with traumatized children, and I worked with dozens of them, they don't get worse when they're healing. They might have setbacks, but there should be progress. Small things. Trust building. Oliver seems more afraid now than when I started 3 weeks ago." Benjamin's eyes sharpened. "What are you saying?" I'm saying," Harper chose her words carefully, "I think you should observe one of the sessions. Don't tell Charlotte you're watching. Just see what happens when she thinks no one's paying attention." For a long moment, Benjamin just looked at her. Then he nodded slowly. "Tomorrow. Charlotte has a session at 4 o'clock. I'll be there." After Harper left that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just set something irreversible in motion. She thought about the Morrison case, how she'd reported what she'd seen, how no one had believed her, how the family had destroyed her career. She thought about her tiny apartment, her mounting debt, the precarious edge she was living on. But then she thought about Oliver's eyes, about the bruises on his arm, about the way he flinched when Charlotte's name was mentioned. Some things were worth the risk. The next day, Harper arrived at 3:30 as usual. Charlotte came at 4, all professional smiles and designer perfume. She went into the playroom with Oliver, closing the door firmly behind her. Harper didn't know where Benjamin was hiding, but she knew he was there. She could feel the tension in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. At first, everything seemed normal. Harper could hear Charlotte's voice through the door, pleasant and patient. But 15 minutes in, something shifted. "Oliver, I'm losing my patience with you." Charlotte's voice went hard. "We've been working on this for months. You're not even trying." Silence. "Look at me when I'm talking to you." A small choked sound. Oliver crying. "Oh, for God's sake, you're 4 years old, not a baby. Your mother is dead, Oliver, dead. And crying about it isn't going to bring her back." Harper's vision went red. She started toward the door, but it slammed open before she could reach it. Benjamin Castellano stood in the doorway, and Harper had never seen anything more terrifying than the cold fury on his face. "Get out," he said to Charlotte, his voice deadly quiet. "Get out of my house. If you ever come near my son again, you won't live to regret it." Charlotte's face went white. "Benjamin, I can explain." "You have 60 seconds to leave before I forget that I don't hurt women." Charlotte fled. Benjamin scooped up Oliver, who was sobbing silently, his whole small body shaking. "It's okay," Benjamin murmured, his voice breaking. "It's okay, buddy. She's gone. She's never coming back. I've got you." Over Oliver's head, Benjamin's eyes met Harper's. In them, she saw gratitude, fury, and something else, something that made her heart skip. "Thank you," he said simply. Harper nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She didn't know it yet, but everything had just changed. After that day, the Castellano mansion felt different. Benjamin started coming home earlier, spending every possible moment with Oliver. He'd been a devoted father before, Harper could see that. But now there was a desperation to it, like he was trying to make up for 6 months of unknowingly letting his son be hurt. Harper's role shifted too. She was no longer just the evening babysitter. Benjamin asked her to stay later, to have dinner with them, to help with Oliver's bedtime routine. The generous salary became even more generous, and slowly, carefully, Oliver started to heal. It was small things at first. A smile when Harper made funny voices during story time, the way he'd take her hand when they walked in the garden, how he'd bring his toys to show her, trusting her to be gentle with them. One evening, 2 weeks after Charlotte's dismissal, Harper was helping Oliver with a puzzle when Benjamin came home. He stopped in the doorway of the playroom, just watching them, and when Harper looked up, the expression on his face made her breath catch. "Harper," he said, "not Miss Williams, but Harper, can we talk? After Oliver's asleep?" She nodded, her pulse quickening. That night, after she'd tucked Oliver in and read him 3 stories, Harper found Benjamin in his study. He stood by the window, looking out at the Boston skyline, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "I owe you more than money," he said without turning around. "You saved my son from my own ignorance." "You didn't know," Harper said. "Charlotte was a professional. You trusted her credentials." "I should have trusted my gut." Benjamin finally turned to face her. "I knew something was wrong, but I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was too close to the situation to see clearly." He took a step toward her. "You saw clearly, even though it could have cost you this job, even though you had every reason to keep quiet and protect yourself." Harper's throat tightened. "I couldn't. Not with Oliver." "Why?" Benjamin asked softly. "Tell me why you care so much." And Harper found herself telling him. About her little brother, Marcus. About how she'd been 17 when their mother died. How she'd tried to take care of him. How she'd failed. About the night Marcus had been hit by a drunk driver because Harper had been at work instead of watching him. About how she'd dedicated her life to child welfare to make up for that one terrible failure. About the Morrison case and how history had repeated itself, her doing the right thing and losing everything anyway. "I can't fail another child," Harper whispered. "I can't." Benjamin crossed the room in 2 strides. For a moment, Harper thought he was going to embrace her, but he stopped just inches away, his hand lifting as if to touch her face before falling back to his side. "You didn't fail, Marcus," he said fiercely. "You were a child yourself, and you didn't fail Oliver. You saved him." "I was just doing what anyone would." "No." Benjamin's eyes burned into hers. Most people would have looked away. Most people would have protected themselves. You didn't. He paused. "You're extraordinary, Harper Williams, and I—" Whatever he was about to say was interrupted by a cry from upstairs. They both ran. Oliver was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face, his mouth open in a silent scream. Night terror. Harper had seen them before. She reached him first, gathering him into her arms. "Shh, sweetheart. You're safe. You're home. We're here." Benjamin knelt beside the bed, his hand on Oliver's back. "Daddy's here, buddy. Harper's here. Nothing's going to hurt you." Slowly, Oliver's breathing calmed, his eyes focused. And then, Harper would remember this moment for the rest of her life. Oliver looked directly at his father and whispered, "Papa." It was the first word he'd spoken in 18 months. Benjamin's face crumpled. He pulled Oliver into his arms, his whole body shaking. "Yes," he choked out. "Yes, buddy. I'm here. I'm right here." Oliver's small hand reached out, and Harper realized he was reaching for her. She moved closer, and suddenly she was part of the embrace, the 3 of them tangled together on Oliver's small bed. "Harper, stay," Oliver whispered, his voice rusty from disuse. Harper looked at Benjamin over Oliver's head. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw everything: gratitude, need, desire, and something deeper, something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. "Yes," Benjamin said, still holding her gaze. "Harper stays." Over the next few weeks, Oliver's progress was remarkable. He spoke more each day, simple words at first, then full sentences. He laughed, he played. He was becoming the child he should have been all along, and Harper was falling in love. She tried to fight it, tried to remember all the reasons it was impossible, the class divide, his dangerous world, the fact that she was his employee. But it was useless. Every time Benjamin smiled at her, every time his hand brushed hers when they passed Oliver between them, every late-night conversation in his study, talking about everything and nothing while the city glittered below them. One night, Benjamin asked her to stay for dinner. Really stay, not eat with Oliver in the kitchen, but dine with him in the formal dining room after Oliver was asleep. Harper wore the nicest dress she owned, which wasn't saying much. But when she came downstairs, the way Benjamin looked at her made her feel like royalty. "You're beautiful," he said simply. No one had ever said that to her like they meant it, like it was an undeniable fact rather than a compliment. Dinner was intimate, candlelit, charged with unspoken electricity. They talked about books, music, dreams they'd given up on. Benjamin told her about growing up in his father's shadow, about inheriting an empire he'd never wanted but had learned to control. Harper told him about her dreams of opening a children's advocacy center, a place where kids like Oliver, like Marcus, could get real help. "I'll fund it," Benjamin said suddenly. Harper blinked. "What?" "Your center. I'll fund it. Every penny." He leaned forward. "You should be doing that work, Harper. You're brilliant at it. You shouldn't be wasting your talent babysitting." He stopped himself. "Not that caring for Oliver is a waste, you know what I mean. Benjamin, I can't accept him. It's not charity. It's an investment. In something I believe in." His hand covered hers on the table. "In someone I believe in." The touch sent electricity up her arm. Their eyes locked and Harper saw her own desire reflected back at her. "Harper," Benjamin said roughly, "I need to tell you something. These past weeks, having you here, watching you with Oliver, getting to know you." He stood abruptly, moving around the table to stand before her. "I'm falling for you. God help me. I'm falling for you. And I know I shouldn't. I know all the reasons this is complicated, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this." Harper stood too, her heart hammering. "Benjamin, if you don't feel the same, tell me now and we'll never speak of it again. You'll still have your job, still have the funding for the center. Nothing changes except I'll know to keep my distance." His voice dropped. "But if you do feel something, anything at all..." Harper kissed him. It was impulsive and terrifying and perfect. Benjamin's arms came around her immediately, pulling her close, and Harper melted into him. The kiss was everything, desperate and tender, passionate and gentle. It was coming home to a place she'd never been. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Benjamin rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not as Oliver's babysitter, not as my employee. Stay as..." He pulled back to look at her. "Stay as mine, if you'll have me." "Yes," Harper breathed. "Yes." They were so lost in each other that neither of them heard the front door open. Neither of them saw the figure slip inside, moving through the shadows of the mansion like she belonged there. Charlotte Westwood had returned, and she was done playing nice. The next morning, Harper woke up in Benjamin's arms for the first time. They'd spent the night talking, kissing, making plans for a future that felt both impossible and inevitable. When dawn broke over Boston, painting the bedroom in shades of gold, Harper felt happier than she'd been in years. Then her phone rang. It was Mrs. Chen, her neighbor in Dorchester, the woman who sometimes watched Harper's plants when she worked late. "Harper, dear, I'm so sorry to bother you, but there's someone here. A woman. She's asking questions about you, about where you work. I didn't tell her anything, but she's quite persistent." Ice flooded Harper's veins. "What does she look like?" "Blonde. Expensive suit. She said she's a therapist who used to work with your employer." "Charlotte." Harper was out of bed in seconds, pulling on her clothes from the night before. Benjamin woke immediately, his instincts sharp. "What's wrong?" "Charlotte's at my apartment building, asking questions." Benjamin's expression went dark. "Stay here. I'll handle it." "No." Harper grabbed her coat. "This is about me. I need to be there." They compromised. Benjamin would send 2 of his men ahead, and they'd follow in his car. But as they pulled up to Harper's building 30 minutes later, Harper knew immediately that something was very wrong. Her apartment door was open. Benjamin's men moved in first, hands inside their jackets where Harper knew they kept guns. But the apartment was empty. Empty except for the destruction. Someone had torn the place apart. Drawers dumped, furniture overturned, papers scattered everywhere. And on the wall, written in red lipstick, were the words, "Child abuser." "No," Harper whispered. "No, no, no." Benjamin's arm came around her shoulders. "This is Charlotte. She's trying to discredit you. It's going to work." Harper's voice shook. "Don't you see? This is exactly what happened with the Morrisons. They spread lies about me, destroyed my reputation, and no one believed my side. Charlotte has credentials, connections. You're not just anything," Benjamin said fiercely, "and this time you're not alone." But it got worse. Over the next 3 days, Charlotte launched a systematic campaign. She filed a formal complaint with the Massachusetts Board of Social Work, accusing Harper of unethical behavior and child endangerment. She gave an interview to a local news station, tearfully claiming that Benjamin had fired her because she'd discovered Harper was abusing Oliver. She hired a lawyer and threatened to sue for wrongful termination. None of it was true. All of it was damaging. Harper watched her dream of the advocacy center die before it even began. Who would trust an advocate accused of abuse? Benjamin's lawyers assured her they could fight this, that Charlotte's accusations wouldn't hold up. But Harper had been through this before. She knew how these things worked. The court of public opinion didn't care about evidence. Then Oliver started having nightmares again. Harper found him one evening crying in his room, and when she asked what was wrong, he whispered, "Is Miss Charlotte coming back?" "No, sweetheart, never." "Promise?" "I promise." But Oliver's face was still troubled. "She says she is. She called Papa. I heard him yelling." Benjamin confirmed it that night. Charlotte had been calling, leaving messages, making threats. She wanted money, a lot of it, or she'd take her story public in a bigger way. She'd go to the federal authorities, claim Benjamin was involved in illegal activities. She'd make sure Harper never worked with children again. "She's using Oliver," Harper said numbly, "using the fact that he's vulnerable, that his father is—" She stopped. "A criminal," Benjamin finished for her. "Yes, she knows I have enemies, knows the wrong kind of attention could be devastating." Harper looked at this man she'd fallen for, this complicated, dangerous, devoted man, and made a decision. "I'll leave," she said. "If I'm gone, Charlotte has no leverage. Oliver will be safe." "No." Benjamin's voice was absolute. "You're not leaving. We're going to handle this together. Benjamin, I can't let you—" "Harper." He cupped her face in his hands. "I've spent my entire life in the shadows, doing things I'm not proud of to protect what's mine. And you and Oliver, you're mine now. I'm not letting Charlotte or anyone else take that away." The kiss was fierce, possessive, and Harper melted into it even as her mind screamed that this was wrong, that she was dragging him into her mess, that she should protect him and Oliver by leaving. But she was tired of running, tired of losing, and maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. That night, Benjamin made calls. By morning, 3 of Charlotte's professional references had mysteriously withdrawn their endorsements. The reporter who'd interviewed her discovered some irregularities in her story and killed the segment. The lawyer she'd hired suddenly had a conflict of interest. Harper should have been relieved. Instead, she felt uneasy. "Benjamin, what did you do?" "What I had to." "Did you threaten them?" "I persuaded them to see reason." Harper pulled away from him. "That's not how this should work. We should fight this legally, properly, the way you did with the Morrisons." Benjamin's voice was harsh. "How did that work out for you, Harper?" The words hit like a slap. Harper's eyes filled with tears. Benjamin immediately softened. "I'm sorry. That was unfair." He reached for her, but Harper stepped back. "Maybe this won't work," she whispered. "Maybe we're too different. Your world, my world." "Our world," Benjamin corrected. "We're building something new together. Something better." Before Harper could respond, Benjamin's phone rang. He answered it, and Harper watched his face go white. "When?" He barked into the phone. "How long ago? Find her. Now." He hung up and looked at Harper with barely contained panic. "Oliver's gone. He was playing in the garden. The guards turned their backs for 30 seconds and he vanished. Harper's world tilted. Where? There's a note. Charlotte took him. The ransom note was simple. Come alone to the address below at midnight or you'll never see your son again. Bring the girl and Oliver dies. Benjamin's entire organization mobilized. Within an hour, they'd located Charlotte's position, an abandoned warehouse in Southie. But they couldn't move yet, not until they knew Oliver was safe. The hours until midnight were the longest of Harper's life. Benjamin paced his study like a caged animal, coordinating with his men, planning every possible scenario. Harper sat on the couch, numb with terror and guilt. "This is my fault," she whispered. "If I'd never come here, don't." Benjamin's voice was raw. "Don't you dare blame yourself. This is on Charlotte, only Charlotte." At 11:30, Benjamin prepared to leave. He'd put on body armor under his suit, had guns concealed in 3 different places. His face was a mask of cold fury. "Stay here," he told Harper. "My men will protect you." "No," Harper stood. "I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. If something happens to me, Oliver needs you. If something happens to you, Oliver loses both of us." Harper's voice was steel. "I'm coming. You can't stop me." For a moment they stared at each other. Then Benjamin pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you," he said. "I should have said it before. I love you, Harper Williams." "I love you too," Harper whispered. "Now let's go get our boy." The warehouse was dark, decrepit, surrounded by Benjamin's men in the shadows, but they stayed back, as instructed. Benjamin and Harper walked in alone. Charlotte stood in the center of the empty space, Oliver held tight against her. The little boy's face was streaked with tears, his eyes wide with terror, but he was alive. He was okay. "Let him go," Benjamin said, his voice deadly calm. "Oh, I will," Charlotte smiled. "After we come to an understanding, you're going to pay me $5 million. You're going to publicly state that you fired me unjustly, and you're going to make sure Harper Williams never works with children again." "You're insane," Harper breathed. "Am I?" Charlotte's eyes flashed. "I spent 6 months trying to get close to you, Benjamin. 6 months playing the devoted therapist, and you barely looked at me. Then she shows up." Charlotte glared at Harper. "And within weeks you're looking at her like she hung the moon, a nobody, a disgraced social worker. What does she have that I don't?" "A soul," Benjamin said. Charlotte's face twisted. "You're going to regret that." She started to back toward the rear exit, dragging Oliver with her. "Mama!" Oliver suddenly cried out and Harper's heart stopped. He was calling for her, for Harper. The moment of distraction was all Benjamin needed. He moved with lethal speed, crossing the distance before Charlotte could react. His gun was out, pressed against her temple. "Let him go." Charlotte released Oliver, and Harper ran forward, scooping him into her arms. The little boy clung to her, sobbing, and Harper backed away toward the entrance, murmuring comfort, checking him for injuries. "You won't shoot me," Charlotte said, but her voice shook. "Not in front of the boy." "You're right," Benjamin said. He lowered the gun. "I won't." Charlotte smiled triumphantly. Then Benjamin's fist connected with her jaw, and Charlotte crumpled to the ground unconscious. "But I'll do that," he finished. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police, tipped off by an anonymous call from one of Benjamin's men. Charlotte would wake up in custody, facing kidnapping charges, assault of a minor, extortion. Her career was over. Her freedom was over. Benjamin crossed to Harper and Oliver, gathering them both in his arms. "It's over," he whispered. "It's finally over." Oliver looked up at both of them, his small face serious. "Can we go home now?" "All of us?" Harper met Benjamin's eyes. She saw her future there, complicated, unconventional, but full of love. "Yes," she said. "Let's go home." 6 months later, Harper stood in the grand ballroom of the Castellano mansion, looking around at the gathering crowd with wonder. The Harper Williams Children's Advocacy Center was officially opening, and it seemed like half of Boston had shown up to celebrate. But the most important people were right beside her. Oliver, now 5 years old and thriving, stood between Harper and Benjamin, holding both their hands. He was chattering excitedly about the art therapy room they designed, about the play space, about how he was going to help other kids who felt scared and alone. "Are you happy, Mama?" Oliver asked, looking up at Harper with those beautiful brown eyes that no longer held so much sadness. Harper's throat tightened. Oliver had started calling her Mama 2 months ago, and it still made her want to cry every time. "So happy, sweetheart." Benjamin's arm came around her waist, pulling her close. "I'm proud of you," he murmured against her ear. "Look at what you built." "What we built," Harper corrected. She looked around at the center, at the therapy rooms, the safe spaces, the trained advocates ready to help. This was her dream made real. A place where children would be protected, believed, heard. A place where kids like Oliver, like Marcus, could heal. That evening, after the guests had left and Oliver was asleep upstairs, Benjamin led Harper out to the garden. The June air was warm and fireflies danced between the hedges. "I have something for you," Benjamin said. He pulled out a small velvet box. Harper's heart stopped. "I know we've only known each other for 8 months," Benjamin said. "I know this is fast, but Harper, you and Oliver, you're my family, my everything, and I don't want to waste another day not being officially yours." He opened the box, revealing a stunning ring. "Marry me, be Oliver's mother legally, be my wife, be mine, forever." Harper's vision blurred with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." The kiss was sweet and full of promise. Above them, a light flicked on in Oliver's window. Harper looked up to see the little boy watching them, a huge smile on his face. He waved and they waved back. Harper thought about the moment she'd first stood outside these gates, desperate and uncertain. She thought about the phone call that had changed everything, the whispered warning that had set them on this path. She thought about how sometimes the right choice cost you everything, and sometimes it gave you everything instead. As Benjamin pulled her close and Oliver watched over them like their guardian angel, Harper finally understood what home felt like. It felt like this. This story has come to an end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys powerful emotional stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.